Hello, I'm Matthew Malcolm with Pacific Nut Producer Magazine, reporting to you here today from the Willamette Valley of Oregon. I'm here, hazelnut industry, talking with Erica Cherno. She is the horticulture extension specialist at Oregon State University. You cover a broad spectrum of crops there, but hazelnuts is one of the important ones that you work with that we wanted to talk specifically about, seeing all the acreage, the new acreage going into hazelnuts, and people transitioning from growing other crops in the area to hazelnuts. When they're thinking about moving over, there's a big difference between growing, grass seed and growing hazelnuts. So, what would be some considerations, going into it that you would make sure they want to know?
Yeah, I always tell people do your homework first and make sure you're prepared and understand the industry well. Soil type is very important, especially we do see a lot of transition from people doing grass seed into hazelnuts. A lot of those grass seeds can grow well on a heavy clay soil. Hazelnuts not so much. So growers do need to consider that, whether or not they need to improve drainage in their land before putting some trees in the ground. Consider market as well. There's a lot of different varieties out there. Get to know those varieties. OSU has a hazelnut breeding day, usually in September. That's a great way to go out to Corvallis, kind of see those trees, what they look like at full maturity, know which ones can be sold kernel versus in shell. Those are the types of things you want to be considering. And then there's a lot of variation with spacing as well. Do you want to do double density, single density? Just thinking about the labor involved, your environmental conditions, and then also, of course, the market that you're going to be selling it into as well. And just do your homework and kind of know the differences. This is a great event to come out to talk with folks. You can talk to other growers about what they've done. There's some growers that are very much like the double densities. Others wish they hadn't done it because you do have to go in and remove trees after about 10 years. So yeah, just think about all the different things you need to consider. Do your homework first and make sure you're ready. So.
Yeah, and as far as the amount of acreage you'd want to dedicate, because oftentimes farmers of other crops going into it, they don't want to just go all in right away. They want to, stick their toe in the water, you know what I mean? So how much acreage, because you got to invest in equipment too, right?
Yeah.
And whether you're having somebody custom harvest, for example, or if you want to invest in your own equipment to do it, what justifies putting in a set amount?
Yeah, usually about 30 acres is probably what you want to be looking at for minimum for it to pencil out. I do get calls from folks that just want to put in a 10-acre orchard, and that doesn't always pencil out, because you do have to, there's all those startup costs for trees, for equipment, or you're hiring out a lot of that labor. And yeah, the labor is another thing. I think, I do get calls from folks, they think hazelnuts are going to be less work, but it can be quite a bit. It is a lot of work. You're still having to go out and prune the trees every year. That's quite a bit of labor itself. You have to think about putting in irrigation for the first couple years to make sure the trees are watered in, the young trees. So yeah, it can be quite extensive. I usually say about 30 is probably about the minimum you want to be considering.
Right, and that labor really is kind of spread out throughout the year.
Yes, yeah.
So when you may think that it's not going to take as much, well, it might be just as much as growing, grass seed or whatever, but it's just spread out over a longer period of time. So they can count on having work going on year round, especially if they're diversifying and adding that to their commodities that they grow, right? Well, thank you so much for taking the time, Erica. We also really appreciate your work and writing in our Hazelnut Orchard Tasks and Pacific Nut Producer Magazine. So if you've heard her name before, we've written it down a few times, at least in the magazine. So we really appreciate your efforts there to serve the growers. Read more about these things in Pacific Nut Producer Magazine. I'm Matthew Malcolm, PacificNutProducer.com.